Today I'm going to show you how to make this little bracelet. I'm calling it the sparkle bone because just like with a few of my other videos, if you watch it, I'm just playing around with the herringbone. I love the basic herringbone stitch because you can do so many weird little things. You can embellish it so many ways. You can sew through it. You can do all kinds of different things with the herringbone. So with this one, I'm incorporating a Monty into the middle of my basic herringbone stitch, and then I'm embellishing the outside. We're also going to make our own clasping with one of the bicones. I'm going to use a little bit bigger bicone for my next one, and a loop of beads on the other side to go around it. Now let's look and see what we need for this project today. Okay, so for this project today, I'm going to use Nanofil, and it is a Berkeley product, just like Fireline. This one is 10 pound because it is smaller than the original Fireline. A 10 pound fits through your needle nicely and works well with the beads. It's kind of like working with an 8 pound regular Fireline. It's a very smooth texture and I really enjoy it. Plus, I ran out of 8 pound Fireline, so I'm using my Nanofil that I bought a while ago, and I'm finding that I really do like it. So that's what we're going to use, but you can most certainly use 8 or 6 pound regular Fireline. We are also going to need 15 OC beads. This is a Toho galvanized silver permanent finish. We're going to be using Montees, and this is a 4mm Monty. And just like with the ring video that I recently showed you, this one, let me see if I can get in here without blurring. This one has the 4 little holes on the bottom. That's what we're using. Now we can definitely use a rose Monty with the crisscross. You're just going to have to crisscross through instead of going straight up through like I'm going to. You just have to sew backwards a little bit when you do it. But it's not difficult, and you will see what I mean as we go through the process here. So we are going to use some Monties. I'm using the sapphire blue color Monty. And then we are going to need 6mm bicones. I am using I don't even know what brand of crystal this is or anything else. It's just a crystal that I've had around for a while, and it's blue. I don't know even the name of it. It's just the 6mm bicone crystal. Then we're going to use some 8O seed beads. This is a Toho translucent black diamond. And then we're going to use some 11Os. This is a Toho galvanized silver 11O. And it's the permanent finish also. Then for our clasping, we will use one matching 8mm bicone. Of course, it doesn't have to match. It doesn't even have to be a bicone. It can be regular clasp, a toggle clasp that you want to put on there. It can be a round crystal. It can be a button. It can be whatever you decide you want to use for your clasping. I'm using an 8mm bicone crystal. Now, you will need a size 10 beading needle and either your Nanofil or your Fireline. Go ahead and thread onto your needle 2 wingspans, and we'll get started. So to start this project, you are going to pick up 4 8O seed beads onto your needle, like so. And then you are going to bring them down to the end of your thread. You are then going to go back up through the first 2 that you added. So from your tail side, just come up through. Leave a little bit of a tail for yourself because these beads like to slide around, and when you try to tighten them, you'll pull them off your thread if you don't have a bit of a tail. So bring it up like this, and this is what you should have. Now sew back through all 4 of these beads. So I'm coming out on this side, I'm going to go into this side and pull my thread through. And then I'm going to go through this side here, both beads, and pull my thread through. And then I'm going to tighten by pulling the tail and the working thread like so. And this is what you should have. Now you're going to pick up 2 8O seed beads onto your needle. You're coming out of this seed bead here. We're going to go directly down into just the first seed bead on the second column. And we're going to exit that first seed bead
and pull our 2 new seed beads down on top of the previous 2,
just like this.
and then we're going to cross over. We're coming out here. We're going to cross over into, if I can position myself here, into these 2 beads right here and come up through them like so. And pull your thread through, just like that.
So we have 3 little sections of herringbone, just like we did when we made the pinky bling ring, this one here.
Now we're going to come down into
These 3 beads, all 3 of them,
and we're going to exit. We're going to make our clasping end. So we're going to pick up 2 11-0 seed beads and an 8-0 seed bead and our
8mm bicone
crystal and then an 11-0 seed bead.
So what you should have on your needle is 2 11-0s, an 8-0, your 8mm bicone crystal, and
an 11-0. Then you will drop this down to your work like so.
and hold on to it here. If I can get my fingers to work.
And just ignore your tail. Go around the 11-0 on top of the bicone crystal. Go into the 8-0 underneath the bicone crystal, and then pull your thread through those 3 beads. Tighten it up, and then pick up 2 11-0 seed beads,
like so,
and go down through your herringbone all 3 stitches, like this.
And that's what you should have. Okay, from this point, we are going to add our first little Monty. So how we're going to do that, in the ring we picked up an 11-0 and then put our Monty on. In this one, we're going to pick up, since we're using such small Monties this time, we're going to pick up a 15-0 seed bead. I'm going to back off just a little because it's just way too close for me to stay in frame. Okay, so pick up a 15-0 and drop it down. And then we're going to pick up one of our Montees. Now at this point it doesn't really matter which way the Monty ends up because we can turn the piece over either way. But as you work through this, you're going to have to make sure that you keep the Montees up the direction that you want them to lay on your bracelet so that they won't be upside down. And when you do that, you just place it in your hand, and then you'll go through the 2 side little holes, and I'll show you. I know my thumb is in the way, but I want to try to keep my Monty the direction I want it. And then I'm going to go through those 2 holes right there in the Monty. You get very close so you can see. And those 2 holes, just like that. I've got a 15-0 already on. I'm going to bring this down a little bit. I'll just bring it down all the way. And then I'm going to pick up a 15-0, 2 8-0s, and a 15-0 onto my needle. So I've got a 15-0, 2 8-0s, and a 15-0. I'm coming out of this side of the Monty. I'm going to go into the 2 holes on the other side of the Monty, right here. And I'm going to bring this down and pull until the beads line up like they do on the other side in the herringbone stitch, like so. So just kind of pull them down until they separate. Now, if you're using a rose Monty, the kind with the crisscross on the back, then you're going to have to sew up through one side, put your 15-0 and your 2 8-0s on, and then you're going to have to sew down through the other side through your beads. So you're going to have to do it in a crisscross. And it'll be fairly easy to figure out. It's just that I'm using this type of Monty, so it's straightforward. I can just come up straight through, do my herringbone, come straight down. Now I'm going to pick up another 15-0 seed bead. I'm coming out of my little Monty. I'm going to go into the first bead in my herringbone stitch on the other side of the Monty, or on the bottom here, just like so.
And that's what you should have. Now we're coming out of this bead here, we're going to cross over into the bead right next to it, go through the 15-0 and the Monty and the 15-0. And you may not be able to grab them all in one stroke. If you can, great.
This is how I'm doing it. I'm picking up the 15-0
and then the Monty and then the 15-0 and then the
8-0 on the other side as I come up through this 8-0.
And I'm just going to pull my thread through. Just like so. Let me turn it over so you can see what it looks like. And now we have a Monty
in the middle of our herringbone stitch.
Then we can pick up 2 8-0 seed beads.
We're coming out of this 8-0 here. We're going to
go into this 8-0 here. You don't have to go into the 15-0, just the 8-0. Pull down, lay them out
like so.
You're coming out of this bead, cross over into the one next to it, and go through the one above it. Pull. Now these ones with prongs, these Montees with prongs, you're going to have to watch that your thread doesn't fall into the prongs because it does. And then pull.
Like so.
Pick up 2 8-0 seed beads. We're coming out of this 8-0. We're going to go into the 8-0 next to it, pull our thread through.
Like so.
Then we're going to crisscross over. So we're coming out of this bead. We're going to go into the bead next to it and the bead above that one. Like so. Now it's time to add another Monty.
So I'm going to back up just slightly because I just want to be able to be in frame real well for you. When we need to, we'll bring the camera closer.
Now, I'm going to pick up a 15-0 seed bead. And this is where it comes into play that you have to be careful how your Monty goes on, because otherwise it'll go on the bottom side and
that won't work. So now I'm going to pick up, I've got my
15-0, now I'm going to pick up my Monty. I'm going to line it like this. So I'm going to go through these two right here.
Like so.
And then I'm going to pick up another 15-0, 2 8-0s, and a 15-0.
Onto my thread, or my needle, like this.
I'm going to bring these down. I'm going to flip my Monty over so that it's standing up the way I want it to. And then I'm going to go through the 2 holes on this side
of my Monty, right here.
And pull the 2 8-0 seed beads into herringbone form here.
Now we're coming out of the bottom of the Monty, and we've got to add our
15-0 into the herringbone on the bottom here. So we're coming out here, we're going to go into the top
herringbone stitch here.
Pull the thread through. Now we've got to get back up to the top over here. So we're going to cross over into the herringbone stitch. We're going to cross into the bead next to where we're coming out of. So we're coming out here. We're going to go into this one. We're going to go into the 15-0 and the Monty and the 15-0 and the 8-0,
like so.
And pull
the needle through.
Like this. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to tighten it up by pulling on my thread. Like so.
Back off just a tiny bit.
And then I'm ready to start another herringbone stitch. So I'm going to pick up 2 8-0 seed beads. I'm coming out of this side of the 8-0. I'm going to go into the 8-0 next to it. Excuse me. And then I'm coming out of this 8-0. I'm going to cross over into the 8-0 next to it. And here, like I said, and go up through the one above it also. And like I said before, you have to watch that your thread doesn't fall into the prongs on the Monty. Pull your thread tight. Tension is important on this. Don't let it be sloppy. Pick up 2 8 seed beads. You're coming out of this side, go down into this side, pull the thread through, cross over, you're coming out of this one, cross over into the one next to it,
Go up through the one on top of that one.
pull your thread through, and we'll put on one more Monty, and then we will go to length. So let's pick up one 15-0 seed bead, and then our Monty. We want to hold it so we know that it's going to fall into the proper position. So I'm going to hold it this way, go up through this bead here, this hole here, and then I'm going to pick up another 15-0, and then 2 8-0s, and a 15-0,
like this.
I'm going to bring this down to my work, straighten it out so my Monty is face up, and then I'm going to come through the 2 holes on this side of the Monty.
Like so.
Pull my thread through, tighten it up, and pick up a 15-0 seed bead. Go through the 8-0 underneath the Monty. Tighten everything up. You're coming out of this 8-0 now, cross over, go to the 8-0 next to it, go into the 15-0 seed bead, the Monty here, and the 15-0 and the 8-0. And like I said, you may have to do this in a couple strokes. You can't always get it in one, but I seem to be getting lucky here. Pull all this up. At this point, pull down on it, kind of push your beads down so that they're all
Nice and straight. Now you will continue making your herringbone, 3 stitches of herringbone, then adding your Monty, then 3 more stitches of herringbone until you get to the length that
you want for your bracelet. And when we come back, I will show you how many
I have made.
Okay, so I have gone to length, and for me,
this measures right now right at 7 inches. Now I want my bracelet to be 7.5 inches.
My clasping on this end is going to take up about 1 inch, and
that will make it a much bigger bracelet than what I intend to have my finished product. However, when I come back through and do my embellishment, it kind of pulls everything in and shrinks it down a little bit. So hopefully I will end up with about a 7.5 inch bracelet, allowing for my embellishments to shrink down my bracelet a little bit. Now, this I went 15 of the Montees, so with a unit of herringbone in between each. So you'll want to count 15 of your Montees if you want to do the same length I am, and make sure you end with the herringbone link on the end here with your 3 units.
now we are going to put the other end of the clasping on. Excuse me. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to pick up 2 11-0s, an 8-0, and then we're going to have to pick up enough to make a loop big enough to go around
This little bicone crystal here.
So I'm going to pick up, on my other one it was a 6mm and I picked up 12, so I think I'm going to pick up about 16 11-0s. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so what you will have to bring down
Is 2 11-0s, an 8-0, and then 16 11-0s.
and then we're going to go through the 8-0. So just loop around, just go through the 8-0 and pull this down. And at this point, I'm just going to wrap it around my finger, hold it tight, make sure it goes over my little 8mm crystal here, and it does.
It goes over it just fine. So I'm going to say if you're using an 8mm bicone, then 16 11-0s. If you're using a
Button or a smaller bicone or a round crystal or whatever,
this is how you'll measure it. Just put as many as you think will go around it and measure it and add more or subtract some if
it doesn't fit correctly. Now, I've gone through the 8/0. I'm going to pick up 2 more 11/0 seed beads. And then I'm going to go down into the first 2 of my herringbone stitch here instead of just 1, because I want this to be a little bit more secure. So I'm going to pull it down here, or pull it through here, and then I'm going to cross over and I'm going to come back up through, and I'm going to come back up through the 2 8/0s and then all of my beads. So I'm going to go through the 2 8/0s and then through the 2 11/0s on top of them, and the 8/0 here. And I'm going to pull this around, or pull this through. I don't know why I'm having an issue with that, but pull it through. And then I'm just going to sew back through all of the seed beads in my loop to reinforce it. You can do this however many times you want to do it, but I'm just going to reinforce it once here for the sake of the video. And I'm going to come back down through and then go through the 8/0 right here. Let's get back in frame here. Then I'm going to come through these 2 11/0s on this side, and then the first 2 8/0s in my herringbone stitch, like so. At this point, we're going to start our next embellishment. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew down into the 3rd 8/0 in the herringbone, right here. And then we're going to do an embellishment all the way down the side. But what we're going to do is we're going to do both sides at once. So we're going to be sewing through the herringbone in order to do this. Otherwise, if we don't do that, when you start the embellishment, the bracelet will curl to one side, and it's hard to straighten it back out when you do the other side. So how we're going to do is we're going to pick up an 11/0, and then we're going to pick up an 8/0, and then we're going to pick up an 11/0, and we are going to go, we're coming out of this little 8/0 seed bead right here. We're going to skip over the Monty and the 15/0s and go into this 8/0 here. And pull the 3 little beads down against the bracelet. Then we're going to go across. We're coming out of this 8/0 right here. We're going to go across into the 8/0 right next to it and exit just the 8/0. You don't want to go through the 15/0 on the other side. Then we're going to pick up an 11/0, an 8/0, and an 11/0 onto our needle like this. Let me reposition myself here. And I'm coming out of this 8/0 right here. I'm going to go up, I'm going to skip over the 15/0 in the Monty and the 15/0 on the other side, go up through the 8/0 in the herringbone stitch, and pull. Now we've got to get down to our next one, so we have to cross over again. So we're coming out of this 8/0 here. We're going to cross over into this 8/0, and then we're going to go down through the 3 beads we added in our embellishment. So I'm going through this herringbone 8/0, the 11/0, and the 8/0 I just added, and to pull it through. Then I'll go into this 11/0 right underneath the 8/0 I'm exiting from, and then through the 3 8/0s in the herringbone stitch right underneath that, excuse me, and pull the thread through like so. Now I need to do another embellishment, so I will pick up an 11/0, an 8/0, and an 11/0 onto my needle like this. I'm coming out of this 8/0 here. I'm going to skip over the 11/0, the Monty, the 11/0, and go into the next 8/0 in the herringbone stitch, just the top one. And grab my entire bracelet. Darn it. Okay. And then we're coming out of this 8/0 here. So we're going to cross over into the 8/0 right next to it. And there we go, getting caught on the prongs again. This will happen the entire time you make this bracelet, so if you have the pronged Montees, so just kind of watch that. Then pick up an 11/0, an 8/0, and an 11/0. You're coming out of this 8/0 skip over all the Monty and 15-0 stuff, come through
the herringbone stitch 8-0 right on top of
the Monty there, and pull your embellishment down. Now you're going to cross back over
so we can get to the other side again and get down to the next unit.
So we're coming out of this 8-0, we're going to sew into this 8-0 right here and pull the thread through. Make sure it goes down between the beads. Go through the 11-0, the 8-0, and the 11-0 in your embellishment. Pull the thread through.
Like so. This is what this should look like so far.
Now, let's straighten out my piece, and I'm going to go down into the 3.
I'm coming out of this 11-0 right here. I'm going to go down into these 3
herringbone beads. Now don't pull real tight as you do this or you'll bunch your necklace up. You don't want any slack, but you don't want it to be very tight because you'll pull your herringbone out of whack
and you'll pull your beads on the side too tight to get through again, and you'll just wad everything up. So no slack, but not real tight
tension as you do this. Now we're going to do one more and then we'll go to length doing this. So let's pick up an 11-0 seed bead, an 8-0 seed bead, and an 11-0 seed bead. We're coming out of this
little 8-0 in the herringbone.
We're going to skip over the Monty and the 15-0s,
go into the top bead in the next section of herringbone,
and exit and pull the beads down. Now we're going to cross over into the bead next to where we're exiting, and again avoid the 15-0s, pick up an 11-0, an 8-0,
and an 11-0.
Cross or skip over the top of the Monty and the 15-0s and go into the first bead in the herringbone stitch.
Right here.
And pull through. Now you're coming out of the 8-0. You're going to cross over into the next 8-0. Pull your thread through. Make sure it goes down between the beads real well. Then go through the embellishment that you just added. And then down through the next 3 herringbone beads and begin your next embellishment around the next Monty. Now, as you do this, just kind of make sure you can straighten these out. You don't want them to fall behind the bracelet. You don't want them to be really tight. You just want them to lay nicely
around each stone, like so. And go ahead and do this around each and every Monty until you get to the end, and we will be back. Okay, so I have put my embellishment on the entire length of my bracelet. And this is what it looks like. Now I'm going to zoom in here
and show you. I just put this last 3
beads on in my embellishment, and I'm exiting this little 8-0 right here.
I'm going to sew up into the next one, the next 8-0, next to it, just as we have been doing, and up through the embellishment beads that we put on, and up through all 3 of them, and then I'm going to come up through this
herringbone stitch 8-0 right here, and then I'm going to
cross over to the bead next to it and pull my thread through. And at this point, I'm going to cut off my tail and burn it down. So I'm going to leave just a little extra. And then I'm going to burn that down into a little blob.
Tuck it in my beads,
like so. And now we're coming out of this
little 8-0 seed bead right here. Let me back off just a little because
I can't stay in frame. we're in this little 8/0 seed bead here. We're going to sew back down this embellishment, but we're only going to sew into the 11/0 and the 8/0, and then we're going to exit the 8/0, just like so. And catch our thread. And pull it through. Well, darn it. Let's do that right. Okay, so now I'm exiting this 8/0 seed bead here, and I'm going to start my next embellishment. And we'll just work down one side with this, and then we'll work up the other side. So how we're going to do this is we're going to pick up an 11/0 seed bead, a 6mm Bicone crystal, and an 11/0 seed bead, just like this. We're coming out of this 8/0. We're going to go directly into the next 8/0 in the next embellishment. And we're going to pull these beads down, just like that. Simple enough. You want it to gather. Now this is definitely going to curve this bracelet a little bit and cinch it in a little bit. So this is where I say you lose a little length. So if you notice that it's not real tight through here, as you work through and you pull your tension through, it will close up. You won't have a bunch of gaps. So now we're coming out of this 8/0. We're going to pick up an 11/0, a 6mm Bicone, and an 11/0, and we're going to go into the next 8/0 seed bead and pull, just like this. And again, an 11/0, a 6mm Bicone, and an 11/0. Go from this Bicone to the next Bicone in the next embellishment and pull. Just like so. Now don't pull overly tight to where you bunch everything up and curve your bracelet to the point to where you can't straighten it out on the other side. Just make sure there's no slack. Pick up an 11/0, a Bicone crystal, and an 11/0, and slide into the next 8/0. Do this all the way to the end, and after we have done that, we'll be back to do the other side. Okay, so I have gone all the way down. I'm just about to put my last Bicone in my embellishment here. Let's zoom in a little bit. I'm coming out of this 8/0 here. I'm going to go into this 8/0, and I'm going to go into the 11/0 on the other side of it in my embellishment there. Now I'm going to go up the 8/0 in the herringbone stitch and pull it through. Let me get closer here so you can see. So I've just gone through the 8/0 and the 11/0, and then up into this 8/0 and this herringbone stitch, and then I'm going to go cross over into the next 8/0, go into the 11/0, and the 8/0 in the next embellishment. So go into the 8/0 in the herringbone, the 11/0, and the 8/0 in the top embellishment there, and then pull your thread through. Now I'm going to turn it so I can work with my right hand better, and I'm going to pick up an 11/0, a 6mm Bicone, and an 11/0. I'm coming out of this Bicone. I am now going into the next I'm coming out of an 8/0 seed bead, and I'm going to go into the next 8/0 seed bead and the next embellishment and pull my crystal into place. And again, you'll see some slack, but as you work down, you will eliminate that slack. So then again, pick up an 11/0, a 6mm Bicone, and 11/0. You're coming out of this 8/0. We're going to go into the next 8/0 seed bead right here. And we're going to continue working our way down this entire side, making sure you have decent tension to where there's no slack, but not so tight that it bunches everything up. We'll work all the way down this side of the bracelet, and then we will be back to tie off. Okay, so I have gone to length adding my other side of my Bicone embellishment here. Now, I'm coming out of this 8/0 seed bead here. You want to make sure that your embellishment is not loose, doesn't have any slack, all those things. And then you're coming out of this one after putting your last embellishment on. We are then going to, I'm just going to flip it over just so that I can get to it better. I'm going to go up through this 8/0, I'm coming out of this 8/0, I'm going to go up through this 11/0 right here. Right above the 8/0 I'm coming out of. Then I'm going to go up into my herringbone stitch. And I'm going to go through all of the 3 8/0 seed beads here. I'm going to turn it back over.
Now you can see I am coming out here on the top of my herringbone stitch. Now you can sew up through this clasping again just to
reinforce it, since we only went around it once. So we're going to go up through these two 11-0s, through the 8-0 seed bead, and then
move your 11-0 over on the top because it's tight.
Go through the little 11-0 on top of your bicone, and then back down, and you probably have to move that 11-0 just to get your needle in. And then come back down through the crystal, the 8-0, and the two 11-0s on this side. If you can get them all. And I'm actually going to be able to go through
the entire side here,
the herringbone and everything. So I'm going to go through all these well, no, I'm not, because I'm missing two. So you don't want to miss any. So don't try to get too carried away. Just go through the 11-0s. And then go through the 8-0s. I was trying to get too fancy there. I'm just not that good. Okay. Now I'm going to sew through this little I'm coming out of this 8-0 here. I'm going to sew through this little embellishment. 11-0, 8-0, and then through my bicone crystal. I'm going to pull, make sure everything looks good. Right here, I'm going to catch a little knot. Make sure it slips down between my beads. I'm not going to tighten it completely until I slide it back down through this 11-0 and 8-0 and next bicone. Then I'll pull it tight to make sure that I don't get any
gaps in between my beads, just like that. So I just grabbed a knot and went through.
Now I want to just sew down a little bit more, and you can sew down into your herringbone too, however you find a path that you think will secure it. And I'm just going to sew down through the next 11-0, 8-0, and crystal, and I'm going to catch another knot. I'm going to leave it a tiny bit loose, and then I'm going to go through the next set of beads here, and I'm just going to pull that tight. And I'm going to continue doing that down the side of my piece. You can always even work up the other side, however much you want to sew through it, securing it. Then I will cut this off, burn down my thread, and I'll be back to show you what it looks like on the wrist. Okay, so I am back. I cut off my thread and burnt it down, and this is what it looks like. This is the clasping. I think that's kind of cute. It's pretty secure. I don't see any problem with it. And this is what the bracelet looks like on the wrist. I'll turn it so you can see. And let's get a real close-up so you can see how pretty the stitch is. It's really nice. The little crisscrosses all the way through. I think that turned out really pretty. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And I hope you make one of your own. Have a nice night. Bye-bye.